Let's go ahead, dive in on the Lamborghini. Jaime Lozano, of course, taking Mexico to the Gold Cup as the interim manager. Herc, do you think he's earned the full-time job?
Yeah, I do. Now, I'm going to start here by the Mexican Federation would be shooting themselves in the foot if they decided to turn around and not give him the full-time job. They would turn the fans and the press against him even more, and they would be setting up the next coach to fail. The amount of pressure this coach would be under, with Jaime Lozano's shadow over him, lurking down, looking down, lurking on him, would be incredible.
Not Jose Mourinho, relax. I get it's a Lamborghini, relax.
No, it doesn't matter.
Come on.
Well, are you going to be the guy who says Jaime Lozano's not the guy? Because I don't know.
I'm still not convinced of his resume, and as I've said all along, Herc, I'm still not convinced that what he did in this Gold Cup is really all that impressive. If the U.S. brings their A-team, if Canada brings their A-team, are you convinced that Mexico wins this tournament?
We will get to that.
All right, but that's what we're relying on here. That's what we're relying on when we say Jaime Lozano should get the job, the Gold Cup.
You're not relying on anything because you haven't heard my take. What you're doing is you're already giving your opinion. Now, if you think Jaime Lozano's not the man, say so right now. Is he or is he not?
Yeah. I don't think he's the man.
Okay.
No, I think Mexico can do better. Okay. And the reason you want Mexico to go with Jaime Lozano is out of fear and not ambition. That's no way to make decisions, Herc.
You may be right. You may be right. Here's my fear. I fear that the Mexican directivo, the Mexican Federation, is so incompetent that they won't find anybody better. I fear that Jaime Lozano is the lesser of the evils. I fear that this is as good as it's going to get with these players, and if you don't stick with Jaime Lozano, who gives you a chance of winning, it's not going to happen. You're absolutely right. It is fear. Fear of incompetence.
Yeah. I will agree. They could do worse. I am more convinced of Jaime Lozano after this tournament than before, primarily not just because of the results, which is obviously important, but the way the team played. Like, if you look at how they played under Tata Martino, if you look at how they played under Diego Coca, it was not just bad results. It was really bad soccer. There was a function to the midfield, and some of that is definitely down to competition in this tournament. But that's the kitchen for the Mexican national team. I always say they got to be more pragmatic, yes. But they're going to have to be good on the ball. You're going to have a midfield that can take over games, certainly against CONCACAF competition. And even though on paper I'm not convinced of what we saw in the Gold Cup, the eyeball test looked very good. He definitely has his team playing better. So,
look at that.
And look at that. And there's got how much stock do you put in the vibe, all that the players are saying? Because remember, we questioned it when it was about Greg Berhalter, but now all these guys are backing Jaime Lozano. Is that
like
weight?
This. Not
and
like
how
this.
much weight should that carry?
I never heard Greg Berhalter have this type of backing from any of the players. It was like, yeah, we felt good under Greg. It's a good chemistry. This was more than what we've seen normal players do. There's usually like a little digest or a notebook or a playbook that the players go through and that they say, et cetera, et cetera. This goes beyond that. Now, this is what I will say. Jaime Lozano, you talked about that midfield. The only game all this Gold Cup that Panama was outpossessed was this game. Jaime Lozano, every single sub he made in every single game seemed to pan out, seemed to make an impact in the game. Whether it was Costa Rica where the three subs linked up and scored a goal, or it was Santiago Jimenez in the final, he just hit all the right buttons. And he's been hitting the right buttons with what he says and how he does it and how he makes his team play.
All right, Herc, before we move on from the Gold Cup, let's go big picture, really big picture, giant picture. Gigante de CONCACAF, the giant of CONCACAF picture. All right, so it's a Gold Cup win for Mexico. We know not everybody brought their A teams, but what does it mean for El Tri, Herc, and their standing in the region?
Nothing's changed since the last time you asked me. It's the U.S. right now. And listen, Jaime Lozano himself, post-game, the presser said, some have come close to us. One has passed us. There's clear reflection of where they are right now in this pecking order. of what this tournament was. Now listen, Tata Martino under the same circumstances against the same competition, his team didn't look good. Diego Coca at home versus Jamaica, a lesser Jamaica if you will, in that moment, didn't look great. Jaime Lozano has come in and given this team something to fight for, something to play for. He's giving the fans hope. But I think there's a strong feeling amongst fans and pundits that this was a B-rate tournament, that Canada didn't send 7 of the best players, that the U.S. didn't send anywhere near a full team. I think Jaime Lozano's conscious of Mexico's moment. And if you're a Mexican football fan or a pundit, you have to not get dragged into the past and think, look at the scorecard. Look how many Gold Cups we have. Look at our history, our 100-year-old football history and what we have. Times have changed. And if you're so caught up in the past, you're going to not see what's in front of you. And what's in front of you right now is that you're playing catch-up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. I mean, from a Mexico fan standpoint, I think it kind of stops the free fall. Like, we were getting to a point where the conversation was not going to be, is Mexico even with the U.S.? Is Mexico even with Canada? Is Mexico one of the top 3 teams in the region? If a B team for Canada or this B team for the U.S., which I think was, we discussed this, significantly behind the 2021 B team that won the Gold Cup, if that team beats you, if Jamaica's A team, for whatever their progress has been, beats you, if Panama's A team beats you, now you've dropped into the muck of CONCACAF. You're not even in the elite, if you want to use the word elite when it comes to CONCACAF. You're stretching it a little bit, but you're not even in the elite. This, to me, was a critical performance because it establishes the floor. And I said this before, but Mexican soccer right now needs to a little bit stop dreaming about the ceiling and start worrying about the floor. And at least they established the floor here, Herc. And that, to me, was very, very important. I think it's still clear. The U.S., we know, A team, miles ahead of Mexico. And it looked pretty clear in the Nations League, miles ahead of Canada. I think I would put Mexico right now ahead of Canada based on what we saw in this Gold Cup. I know Canada only sends their B team, but I still think that Mexico right now deserves that second spot, just ahead of Canada and well behind the United States.
Yeah, I didn't like what I saw from Canada in the Nations League, and they have very talented players, but right now, this moment, the way that Jaime Lozano has this team playing, they definitely could compete and actually beat them. Of course, the problem is when you look at recent history between the two, they've not beaten Canada in over 2 years. When you look at the World Cup qualifying, I mean, you talk about that floor, and I'm glad you brought that up. They've not beaten the U.S. men's national team in 6. They actually only beat Central America and the Caribbean in World Cup qualifying. So they need to establish that floor. And you're absolutely right, because Jaime Lozano, what he's been able to do is kind of stop that free fall, if albeit for a brief moment.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.